Did anybody check the weather today? Did it snow in Buffalo? You say that's a weird question to ask. Well, it is. But yesterday was December the 5th. So today's December the 6th. You probably figured that one out for yourselves. I read in the news yesterday that the city of Buffalo, as of December the 5th, had no snow, had received no snow. And that is a 116-year-old record they have broken, getting this deep into the season with no snow. So I guess you could call it unseasonably warm. I guess you could say welcome to El Nino. You could say a lot of things. But, as you look out, I guess, here we sing Christmas songs. And I've always wondered, I've always wanted to experience Christmas in the Caribbean. Really, I just want to experience life in the Caribbean. I'm allergic to cold, and so it just really gives me fits all winter long because it tends to be cold all winter long. And the only thing that bothers my allergies worse than cold is snow, and so you could say God has a sense of humor and relocated me to the wrong area, and that's what I've been trying to explain to him for years. I asked for Florida. He gave me Massachusetts. I don't get it, but here I am. But no, so it's, we sing Christmas songs, and we look out, and the weather isn't quite Christmassy. And those of us who have to drive in it really don't mind, except for when we're singing Christmas songs, it just doesn't quite get there. And I think the reason is, here we are, where most of us are from the general area, and we're accustomed to snow, and we're accustomed to Christmas looking Christmassy. And Christmas is a magical time. Christmas really is a magical time. Days have grown shorter and they've grown darker, and that's going to continue to happen for the next couple weeks before we kind of turn that corner. Temperatures, I was going to say, have plummeted, but really temperatures will plummet. One thing I know about living in New England is the cold will get here. My fear is that it's held off too long and it's going to let go. It's going to keep hold too long in the summer. It's going to be 50 still, and we're going to want 90. But anyway. Temperatures fallen. Traditions and music that we reserve for this season have finally started to make their annual appearance. We sing Christmas songs. Now, I know some of you are excited at Halloween when they start playing Christmas songs and they start breaking out the Christmas decorations. And some of you real crazy folks sing Christmas music all year round. And, hey, to each their own. But typically, we reserve Christmas stories and we reserve Christmas songs, and we certainly reserve our Christmas tree and all of the accoutrement that goes with that to this season. It's all started to finally come out. And all of this really combines to form this really potent sense of wonder, or at least they should. The combined effect of all of this should really create a sense of wonder, and for many of us, it did once upon a time, and I know for some of you it still does. But for some of us, we've become, for lack of a better word, a little jaded. In many ways, Christmas has grown more complicated and less wondrous than ever before, and that's really a tragedy. Christmas trees have grown expensive. We got our tree yesterday, and I was shocked. I probably shouldn't be, because it's probably the same price we paid last year, and I was probably shocked last year too. But my short-term memory is really not that good, and neither is my short-term memory. And so, I never remember that Christmas trees have grown more expensive. I still, get nostalgic over the days when we paid $10 for a tree. Now you can't even buy a stump for $10 anymore. But Christmas decorations have multiplied in both their variety and, of course, their cost. Christmas presents, like every other retail item, are more expensive this year and less substantial this year than ever before. And I don't know about you, but my income seems to be less substantial than ever before. Our overbooked schedules verge on collapse, as everyone and everything that we are a part of wants to help us celebrate Christmas with them. Which leads me to remind you that December the 17th is our extension Christmas program. That's, I believe, Friday night. What's that? 18th. Sorry, I have the wrong date. Friday, December the 18th is our SBC extension Christmas program. And then on Sunday, December the 20th, we're actually having our church Christmas dinner. That's a Sunday. That's in the afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. But everybody that you know is making that same announcement. Here's when our Christmas deal is for this program. So not only do you get to go to the program, you get to go to their Christmas deal too. And so our schedules verge on collapse. Increasingly, it seems like in order to create a sense of wonder, we need the shock and awe of bright lights and loud noises and something that will really rock our world. And my question is simply this: when did Norman Schwarzkopf become Santa Claus? Some of you will have to look that one up. But the movies and the memories of Christmas past draw us to a day when Christmas was simpler, yet invoked a sense of wonder that is unparalleled by our overproduced attempts at creating wonder. I mean, you think about the Christmas movies that you every once in a while drag out and force your kids to watch. They're in black and white. There is no color. And some of them are in color with slow music and people dancing in glorious costume. But Christmas was simpler and somehow invoked a greater sense of wonder than we have today. And so the question that we begin to wrestle with, is there any hope? Is there any hope for us? Can we somehow reclaim that sense of wonder? I don't know about you, but while I may enjoy the tale of the Grinch, I don't wish to become him. I want to have that sense of wonder that is just the magic of Christmas. And kind of a side question, if we could recapture that sense of wonder, what would we do with it or because of it, if we could? Fortunately for us, the answers to both those questions are found in the original Christmas stories themselves. One of the reasons that we're kind of didn't have a reading today is because if we do all the Christmas readings, then I don't have anything left to read to you to preach from. That would be a tragedy. Maybe. But it is in the original Christmas stories that we are introduced to people who had a tremendous sense of wonder that filled their lives and overflowed into actions worthy of story and song. And careful consideration of those stories just might help us to recapture some of the wonder for ourselves. And so this morning I want us to consider Mary and Joseph, or as I like to call them, Joseph and Mary. It really matters. It really matters. So I would invite your attention this morning to two places, if you can look two books of the Bible at the same time. The first one is going to be Matthew chapter 1, and the second one is going to be Luke chapter 1. So it's just chapter 1s, Matthew and Luke. And first I want to display, if you're taking notes, kids, this morning, first of all, displaying their sense of wonder. That's the first point, displaying their sense of wonder. A quick perusal of the New Testament actually introduces us to Joseph and his story first, before we get to Mary's. Matthew chapter 1 and verse 16, case in point, Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. And so we are actually, in the narrative, introduced to Joseph first. Now, I believe, and I said it this morning in Sunday school, so if I'm repeating myself, fine. I believe that God did not choose Mary to be the mother of Jesus. I believe that God chose Joseph and Mary to be the parents of Jesus, and that Joseph was as important to that mix as Mary was, because as a boy, Jesus needed both the guidance of a godly father and the nurturing of a godly mother. He needed both of those things, and we need to be careful not to miss that. Yes, Joseph is going to fade rapidly in the narrative into the shadows and into the background and gone, and we are left to wonder and assume what might have happened to him. But we cannot overstate his importance and his contribution. All of the Christmas narratives read that it was after they were betrothed that the angel came to Mary to give the announcement. And we'll see that as we read. But it was after that arrangement had already been made. They were important together. But Joseph's experience, we find beginning in verse 18 of chapter 1. Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. After his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, see, it's right there. Before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not wanting to make her a public example, was minded to put her away secretly. But while he thought about these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take to you Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Now, I can only imagine being in Joseph's shoes. But here's Joseph. He is engaged, and really betrothal is a step beyond our engagement. It's kind of halfway between our engaged and our married. You get all of the responsibilities and none of the rights, kind of a place where they were. But it's a legally binding agreement. And here's Joseph. He is betrothed to Mary, and all of a sudden she's pregnant and he's not the dad. This is an awkward situation to be in. Now, under Jewish law, there's a couple things here that he had as his prerogative. First of all, he could divorce her, and it really would require a divorce. It was a legally binding thing to be betrothed, and so it would have required a divorce just like any marriage would have to get done. Beyond just simply that, he could publicly shame her. He actually had the right under the law to have her publicly stoned because she was pregnant and he wasn't the dad, so she had committed an act worthy of actually being stoned to death. And as a Jewish man, he could have invoked several things that were hard and harsh to her, and yet the Scripture tells us that he was a just man, and he didn't want to make a public example out of her. There was a real sense of compassion that Joseph had, and whatever he did, he wanted it to do privately. He wanted to do with keeping as much of her dignity intact as he possibly could. And so here he is, he's wrestling with, what do I do? And all of a sudden, he falls asleep, and I'm not sure this was a natural sleep or just the sleep of a hardworking guy who sit too long. You know, hardworking guys, when they sit too long, this is where they go, down. And, hardworking guy, he's suddenly asleep, and all of a sudden, he gets a dream that is a little bit more than a dream, but it's still a dream, a vision of an angel telling him what's going on and what he needs to do. Joseph, you're right. This isn't your child. This is God's child. This is a special child. You need to just go ahead and take Mary, be your wife, and be his dad. That's a tough thing to fulfill. I mean, this experience has gone from awkward to weird. That, I'm going from awkward, my betrothed wife is pregnant, to, now I'm having angelic visitors telling me to go ahead and marry her and raise him and all of these things. That's an experience. And Joseph's action coming out of that experience is simply that he obeyed. And we see it in verse 24, 25. Joseph, being aroused from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took to him his wife, and did not know her till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. So Joseph's experience was he got this awkward news. He had an angelic visitor in his dream, and he obeyed. Mary's experience, similar, but this takes us flipping over to Luke chapter 1 to see her experience. Luke chapter 1, beginning in verse 26. Now in the 6th month, and that's the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy. You'd have to read backwards to get it, but just to fill in the blanks. Now in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. See, there it is again. The virgin's name was Mary. And having come in, the angel said to her, Rejoice, highly favored one, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women. But when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and considered what manner of greeting this was. Then the angel said to her, Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb, and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. He will be great, and will be called the Son of the Highest, and the Lord will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. Then Mary said to the angel, How can this be, since I do not know a man? And the angel answered and said to her, The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the highest will overshadow you. Therefore also that Holy One who is to be born will be called the Son of God. Now indeed Elizabeth, your relative, has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is now the 6th month for her who was called barren. For with God, nothing will be impossible. And you think about Mary's experience. Here she is. She's got the giddy jitters of being betrothed. I mean, this isn't quite like, teenage girls and puppy love. This is a little bit more significant than that, though she was a teenage girl. And she's betrothed now. She's getting ready to get married. Her life is getting ready to change. And all of the emotion that goes with that, then all of a sudden, Gabriel shows up. She's not asleep. She doesn't even get the benefit of being suddenly asleep and getting this in a vision. He just walks up. And so she's got to deal with this consciously. He walks up and says, by the way, Mary, God is so fond of you, you're going to have a baby. That's the kind of good news you can keep to yourself, because I'm not supposed to do that first. Love, marriage, then baby and carriage, kind of a deal. And so she receives this news that she is going to be a mother, and in fact, Joseph is not going to be the father, but this child is going to be the Son of God. Now, do you think that she understands the cultural quandary that she's suddenly placed in? That if she shows up to Joseph pregnant, he's not the father and he knows it. Does she understand the cultural implications of what her life could become? Yeah. And so, equally awkward news for her. Receiving it from an angel, okay. Having the opportunity to actually have a conversation with this angel and get some more information, that's good. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be an unwed mother, potentially. You're going to be a mother, certainly, where your child is not the son of its father. Quite the experience. And so what was her action? We find it in verse 38. Then Mary said, behold the maidservant of the Lord, let it be to me according to your word. And the angel departed from her. What was Mary's reaction? She obeyed. Same scenario, the same experience. Awkward news. Same experience and kind of an angelic interlude, conversation. Same action, obedience. So we get a sense of, you don't even have to think too long and hard to think that they had a sense of wonder in this. I mean, if we saw the angel Gabriel roll up in his, angel outfit, how many of you have seen, I think it's Rose is the cartoon. How many of you have seen that? You get the little angel that visits Rose all the time, and it's just this little, floating, chubby thing with wings until Rose is in trouble, and all of a sudden the angel's 3 stories tall, maxed out in armor, and ready to go to war. Have you seen these? You should Google Rose is Rose. It's a great cartoon. Anyway, but that's how I envision angels. Most of the time, we don't even know they're around, though they are. But when they roll up, in angel mode, you know they're there. And so she's having this conversation. So there is inherent to the experience they had this sense of wonder that we don't really have to think long and hard about because, there was a sense of wonder. I mean, they were talking to angels and they knew they were talking to angels, and wow, how cool is that? But if we were to unwrap their sense of wonder a little bit, and that's our second point, unwrapping their sense of wonder, what was it that caused them to have such a sense of wonder that the experience prompted the action, especially the action that it did? And I think it was the same thing for both of them. And we can, if we go back, we already read it and you already saw it, though you may not have sensed what it was. What was it that translated that sense of wonder into action? Because for us, we want to recapture some of that sense of wonder, and we want to recapture some of that action. And so we need to see where was it that caused it. Look at Matthew chapter 1, back to verse 20. Thinking about Joseph. Just the first part of verse 20, what did it say? But while he, what? Is it there? Yeah, it is, okay. But while he thought about these things, Joseph was engrossed in this process of thinking about the experience that he was in. Now, he hadn't received the angel at this point, but he'd still had news going on. He's thinking about this experience that he's in. Look at Mary, Luke chapter 1 and verse 29, if we bounce back there. Luke 1:29, but when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and what? Considered. There was some thinking going on there. I mean, she was doing it quickly, granted, because he was standing there right in front of her, but she considered, and we get a little bit more of a hint at kind of the contemplative nature of Mary. If we were to skip forward to Luke chapter 2, we find in verse 19 that Mary kept all these things and what? Pondered them in her heart. So we have Joseph thinking. We have Mary considering and pondering. Both Mary and Joseph contemplated what God had revealed and what God was doing in their lives. They were contemplating what God had revealed and what God was doing in their lives. How often do we go through our Christmas rituals without sufficient contemplation? We put up the tree because we put up the tree. We get the tree from the same place every year because we get the tree from the same place every year. Why? Because that's where we get it every year. Why? Because that's where we do. We put lights up on it. Why? Because we do. We do the music. Why? Because we do. What would happen if we stepped back in the Christmas season and really began to contemplate what God has revealed to us and what God is doing in our lives? Could we, do you suppose, through contemplation, and I don't mean, like don a robe, some weird position and yourself to death, but just through some careful, considered contemplation, actually setting aside the time to think, could we recapture a bit of that spirit of wonder that maybe came a little more naturally to us when we were children? I think we might. Which leads me to just the last thought of embracing their sense of wonder. Because contemplation for them led to obedience. They contemplated in this wonder they experienced, and it was that contemplation that led them to obedience. Joseph was thinking about what he should do, and when he was told, he obeyed. Did he have to? No. Mary was contemplating, she was considering what was going on, but she still said, okay, I agree. What would have happened if she said, no thanks? Well, does God force himself on anybody? No. And so I think it was a legit choice on her part as well. But contemplation in that experience of wonder led her to obedience. The Christmas season is busy. We get that. And that makes contemplation all the more important, just like it makes it all the more difficult. But if we don't stop to think about what God is revealing and what God is doing, we will miss it. But if we will make the time and take the time required to contemplate, we will experience a sense of wonder, and it will motivate us to experience God and obey God in ways that we may not have thought possible. And we will recapture the real Christmas spirit, which to me is the spirit of wonder. Now you ask yourself, that sounds great, but does it really work? Can I really think my way into feeling? Let me give you an example. I'll just go yesterday, for instance. We got our tree yesterday. While picking out our tree, I picked it up foolishly, not paying attention to what I was doing, and managed to stab myself in the eye with a pine needle. If you've ever done that, I don't recommend it. It hurt all the way until the time I went to bed. I have 6 terrorists in my family. We call them children. I negotiate with terrorists every day of my life. Some days I win. Most days I do not. Plus, we went grocery shopping because we went to a live nativity in the afternoon. That was delightful, new experience, interesting. Went grocery shopping. Now, I'm the primary cooker in the family, and so it's important that I'm there for that process. I don't like to grocery shop. I mean, I do and I don't. I like it right up until the time we hit the register, and I realize exactly how much of my life savings that I no longer have it's going to take me to feed my family. And then you start breaking it down. Okay, so we got through the register. Kate's been going with me, which has been great. We're doing this together. We're bearing the burden together. It sounds humorous now. It really wasn't. I actually got very, very grumpy and disagreeable. I know it's hard to imagine, but I really did. Because here I'm thinking, it costs so much money to feed us. I don't want to say feed the kids because I eat too, clearly. It costs so much to feed us, and you got all the Christmas, and all of a sudden you start thinking, how much money are we spending at Christmas? And the Grinch starts coming out in full force and effect. And it feeds on itself. And we're talking, okay, now what can we do? Where can we save? How can we do? What can we do? Is there a way to trim? I mean, we have tweaked this whole menu plan, plan out the meals at least a week in advance. We shop to the budget. At the end of the week, there's nothing left in the pantry. So, I mean, we can't even everything is as tight as humanly possible. We buy exactly what we need as cheaply as we can. I mean, and after a couple hours of this, I was cranky. And you see Kate nodding her head, yeah. I was miserable. Confession number 2. I'm a little bit behind in my one-a-day readings. A couple chapters, not very far. So before I went to bed, I sat down and I read Mark chapter 5. So what does that make me? 2-3 days behind schedule. So I sat down and I read Mark chapter 5. Now in Mark chapter 5, very interesting things happen. You'll have to go home and read it, especially if you're behind schedule. If not, you read it a couple days ago and you know. Mark chapter 5, Jesus, first of all, is in Gadara, and he is confronted by this guy who has a legion of demons. He cast those demons out into 2,000 pigs. So I'm thinking it was somewhere around 2,000 demons. That Jesus, here's a guy who lives in the cemetery, who they've tried to bind him. He can't be bound with rope or with chain or with anything. He lives in the cemetery. He doesn't wear clothes. He cuts himself all day long. He's as crazy gets. And he's as tormented gets. And Jesus walks in, casts the demons out like it's no big deal, and says to the guy, okay, I'm going to leave. You go home to your family and you let them know what I've done for you. So Jesus gets where he's going, and all of a sudden a guy runs up to Jesus, and he says, my master Jairus, his daughter is dying, come. Or was it Jairus himself? I think it was Jairus himself. I should reread it. But he gets there, and he said, my daughter is dying. Can you come and heal her? Obviously, Jesus had a reputation of being able to heal people. And so they're heading to Jairus' house. And as he's going, in the crowd that's all around him, this woman comes up, and she's had an issue of blood for 12 years. I don't want to go into where I think that might have, but whatever. She's got this serious medical problem. For 12 years, she is broke because she spent all of her money on doctors, and Mark says she's worse now than she was when she started. They've made it worse. They've tormented her for 12 years, and she's worse. And she gets to Jesus, and she says, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I know that I'll be healed. And so she comes up behind him. She touches the hem of his garment, and she knows just that fast that she is healed. And Jesus knows just that fast that power went out. That's kind of weird. I never had that power to know how it feels when it goes out, but he knew. And so he stops and asks that real famous question, who touched me? And the disciples are like, Jesus, do you see the number of people around you here? I mean, if we want to know who touched you, it's probably everybody within a 10-foot radius. Everybody's touched you. He says, no, who touched me? And the woman knew she was busted. She came up to Jesus and she said it was me. Quick backstory, and Jesus said, look, your faith has made you whole. medical condition, 12 years. Humanly impossible to heal. And Jesus didn't even consciously do it. She just reached up and grabbed his shirt. She was healed. Well, due to all this delay, he gets to Jairus' house, and guess who's no longer alive? His daughter. The delay was all the time that was needed for her to go from living to dead. And he gets there, and people have already started to mourn. And he tells them, look, she's fine. And they start ridiculing him. And so he throws them all out. And he goes into the room where she's laying, her corpse is laying, with her parents and Peter and James and John. And he says to the little girl, get up. And she does. She was dead. I mean, this is usually beyond help. And he just says, little girl, get up. And she does. Three stories. Mark moves quickly. But then I go back to the day that I'm having and my grumpiness and the troubles I face, the pressures I have. And I go, I bet they don't even move the needle for God. I bet he could make it all go away and wouldn't even notice that it was there to begin with. He threw out 2,000 demons. He cured somebody who was incurable. He raised the dead. What is my life so bad that he couldn't just take care of it? I was confronted with a thought that was this. I thought I was living by faith. I've really been living by sight, and now I'm getting closer to living by faith. And it's hard. But it's not hard for him. I did not go to bed grumpy. And the reason I didn't go to bed grumpy was because for a few moments, I contemplated who God was and what he was doing. And it actually made it okay. And so when I say to you that, thinking about trying to recapture that sense of wonder, can we recapture a sense of wonder simply by contemplating on who God is and what he has done and what he has revealed? The answer, I would say to you, by experience, is yes. If we'll really contemplate who God is and what he's doing, we can recapture that spirit of wonder that many of us may have lost around Christmas time to our own peril. We can regain a spirit of wonder. And as we recapture that spirit of wonder and as we contemplate who God is and what he is doing, we, like Joseph and Mary, can actually be moved to obey God in ways that we may never have thought possible. Because that's where contemplation takes us. It takes us to obedience. That's where a spirit of wonder takes us. It takes us to a place where we are in awe of God and we can obey a God that we are in awe of. I don't know about you, but I said, I don't want to be the Grinch. I'm tired of going through Christmas just marking time, doing it because we do it. I want a sense of wonder. I look at my kids and I envy them because they look at the tree and it's just wow. And they listen to the music and they sing all day long. God love them. And it's wow. And they roll out on Christmas morning before me, which is the only day of the year that happens. And they look at the presents under the tree, and while I think as an adult, I wish there was more, they look at them and they go, wow, and everything's great. That's the spirit of wonder I want and I need in my life. because it's that spirit of wonder that's going to propel me to be in awe of my God and to be obedient to him in the ways I want and need to be. So can we commit ourselves to just think a little bit more? To actually contemplate. I mean, the Christmas story, read through it. It's like 4 chapters. It won't take you very long to read, though Luke is as long-winded as any good Baptist would be. But it doesn't take you that long to read, and just the wonder and the amazement of all that's recorded so briefly for us. And just be in awe of God. And allow your contemplation to propel not only a sense of awe, but a sense of obedience. It doesn't take much of you, but it will give much to you, I promise. Father, I love you. I thank you for your word here in Matthew and Luke. I thank you for Joseph and for Mary and for their experience and for their action, for the sense of wonder that they manifested, a sense of wonder that we need. Father, would you help us to contemplate, to just think about, consider who you are, what you've done in Jesus being born, what you've done every day of our lives. And may that propel and recapture a sense of awe and a sense of wonder. And may we be stirred, motivated, empowered to obey you, to trust you because of it. Well, thank you.